Morning, everyone. Bonjour, tout le monde. I hope
Morning.
everybody. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing fine on this nice winter day of February the 7th, 2021. And so let's begin our service today with a song. This song is "We Are One" from the LA Family Church.
I'm having difficulty with this song. Can we play the second song first?
Okay. We have another song that is Hosanna from Miss Nomoto. Let's hear Hosanna.
I see the King of Glory coming down the clouds with fire. The whole earth shakes. The whole earth shakes. Yeah. I see His love and mercy washing over all our sin. The people sing, the people sing. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. in the highest.
Thank you so much for this beautiful song. At this point, please join me in prayer. Our dearest Heavenly Parent, we are so thankful that we can greet you this morning and that we can be together. Even though we cannot meet physically as a community, we can still meet online and we can continue to develop our connection with one another. But most importantly, we want to connect with you, with your heart of love. And we want to share this heart of love with uh, every one of us together as a community. But we want to go beyond that. We want to reach out to those that are close to us as well, starting with our own family. Heavenly Parent, we want to indeed form the Heavenly Parent's holy community. We want to feel your holiness. We want to connect with our true mother's heart at this time as well. We have the opportunities to be living at this time with our true parents, with true mother, and we want to really receive your word this morning. Please guide Dr. Franco Famularo this morning to with his message that they can resonate in our hearts and we can really be empowered from your word and from your guidance in this day. So I thank you and I offer you this prayer this morning in my name, Serge Brosseau, of the Brosseau Blessed Central family, Jew. So at this point, we will have the announcement.
Well, good morning, everyone, and bonjour tout le monde. Always good to see everyone. It's been almost 1 year. It's 11 months, almost to the day, since we've actually gathered together, and we still continue. I have some big news that will come soon. And I want you to hold on because I know some of the announcements are the same, but we have some big news coming. Of course, please continue the prayer condition until February 9th, which is until 2 days from now, until Tuesday, as you know. Next week, February 14th, Canada will host the American Sermon. So there will be a Canadian MC. There will be a Canadian prayer and also Canadian reflection. So stay tuned for that. That's next Sunday, February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Wow.
I encourage you all to participate in the morning devotion. This morning we had more Canadians than ever. And I encourage you to participate in that and also in the Tuesday TribeNet and the fellowship on Tuesday night at 10. And also you will know that some of you have already sent me your testimonies. I encourage you to please send your testimonies of your life in Canada in our group, in our church. That would be wonderful so that we can include it in the historical record. Furthermore, next Saturday at 7:30 p.m., there will be a Famicon, a continuation of our meeting last week at 7:30 p.m. And I encourage you all to sign up for the Holy Community. Okay, as a leader of the Holy Community, there will be a special education session this coming Wednesday night, and you can only participate if you register. Okay, so the link is there. I've sent it a couple of times, and after this, I will put it in the chat so that you can have it and you can do it. Don't worry. Just if you're looking for 3 people, put your wife, your friend, whoever. It's just a question of getting started. Okay? There will be a blessing on April 25th, as you know, and also True Mother is coming to Canada virtually. Right now, she's speaking to each region in Korea, each region in Japan. In fact, I just got the link for Japan and I can send it to you. That's on the 21st. So sometime in March or April, we may see a visit from True Mother. So thank you again for all your contributions and donations, and please continue to do so as you have done. Thank you, and over to Serge.
Thank you, Franco. So now, before the sermon, let's hear our second song, which is We Are One from the Heli Family Church.
There's only one thing here that we can all agree on in this world, that there's a truth that sets us free from our lives. This truth was made with sweat and tears, sent from above us. He brought them down and shared his love and made us one. Now we all must give love like a family would. Now we are strong, 'cause we are one and one, and we are one. We are one in the love that will stop the fear. We are one. We are one in the love that will stop the tears. We will fight in this war till it burns out by the sun. We'll rejoice with the moon in the heavens up above. Now we all must give love like a family would. Now we are strong, 'cause we are one and one, and we are one. We are one in the love that will stop the fear. We are one. We are one in the love that will stop the tears.
We are one with the God-given blessing. Gotta be the one that brings spark from the heavens, be soldiers. Fighting for the cause you can't hold us. Keep on, keeping on, cause you know I do it for my heart with you, and my own with me. And everyone you see, we're one family. Keep shining like the rising sun, the best is yet to come. We are one.
We all have truth inside our hearts to tear our sins to worlds apart. We all can make a better start. Be helping hands and do our part. We all have truth inside our hearts to tear our sins to worlds apart. We all can make a better start. Be helping hands and do our part. 'Cause we are one in the love that will stop the fear. We are one in the love that will stop the tears. We are one in the love that will stop the fear. We are one in the love that will stop the tears.
Yes, we are one. So today the sermon is given by Dr. Franco Famularo, our senior pastor, who also happens to be president of our movement in Canada. So we're lucky here in Montreal. So let's hear the message from Dr. Franco this morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be together, and I wish we could be together in the flesh, but for the time being, this is how it is. The topic this morning, and I'm going to share my screen briefly because I have a few slides, if I can only figure it out. Let's see here. This is it. Yep. Can you see it? Yes, thank you.
Oh, we can. Okay, now.
Now you can, yeah. Can you see half full or half empty?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So the topic this morning is half full or half empty. You've seen this kind of picture before, and you've probably heard this term before. And the question is always, is our glass half full or half empty? It's also another way of speaking about gratitude. And as you know, for the past 100 days or so, we've been attending morning devotion, where each morning starts with several minutes of sharing, of appreciation and gratitude. And it brought to mind, of course, we're always looking at these glasses. In fact, there's the same amount of water in there, or maybe it's sparkling water, maybe it's mineral water, but it looks like water to me. And sometimes it's a question of whether we see that glass as half full or half empty. And I was reminded of a speech that Father gave many years ago when I was doing home church in Britain. And the title of the speech is "Let Us Be Grateful" on June 18th, 1978. And in those days, it was before the fax machine, before the internet, and we were so happy to get even notes of the speech. And we heard about that speech several days later where I was, which was about 100 miles north of London, where Father was, maybe 60 miles, 100 kilometers. And the whole speech is about being grateful. And if you have a chance, I encourage you to read it. So what he said that day, among many other things, was these days, some of you bring your lunch with you during the day. Father was living with us. He was living in the headquarters, and every day members were going out to their area to witness. And he says, these days, some of you bring your lunch with you during the day. Do you put it in your pocket? Sometimes it's a nuisance because it's heavy, but then that can be a source of gratitude too. Have you ever had the impulse to console the sandwich, bumping around in your pocket all morning and day? You worked hard and now I will eat you in a good way. It reveals a good nature if you feel like that. Eating that simple food tastes much better once you know how to be grateful. Yes, and I was one of those people carrying a lunch, maybe not in my pocket, but I wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And so I remember myself eating it earlier so that I didn't have to bother with that sandwich all day long in my pocket. Another thing he said in the same speech, he says, sometimes people don't like bad smells, but you have to teach your nose a lesson. Give a sermon to your nose about how it likes nice smells, but it should also like unpleasant smells. When you talk, speak as though you were singing. When you have some hard things to do, accept the fact that once in a while you have to do hard work also. Yes, this is Father's guidance on whether our life is one of gratitude or not. And as I've been reflecting about this point, I've been wondering, okay, how do I do this? You know, every day during the last 105 days or so, we've been thinking of points of gratitude and sharing appreciation and trying to find those points of gratitude for the past few months has been challenging. Therefore, I'm going to stop sharing, right, for a second, and I'll come back to that later. You know, I have to say that at this point, I'm grateful that I even can be grateful about even 2 points or 1 point every day, because I thought that I had exhausted all the things that I could be grateful about. But there's much more to be grateful for. I'm grateful that God is in my life and has caused me to have a bright outlook on life, and that I sincerely see the glass as half full and not half empty. And I want to explore why that is. You know, the word grateful is deeply connected with the word grace. In some languages like Spanish and Italian, the word for thank you and grace have a common origin, gratia, in Latin, which translates as grazie or gratias in Spanish or Italian. In English and French, as we know, we have the word gratitude or gratitude. And although there are different meanings, grace and gratitude have a common root. How about the words merci and thank you? You know, similarly, merci, it related to the word for pitié, but it comes from price paid for a reward or a gift. And so grace and pity are closely connected to that word. And I discovered that the word thank you comes from the word think. And it originally meant, I will remember what you did for me. And obrigado in Portuguese, it means much obliged, or I'm considerate of what you've done for me. You know, according to the dictionary, the first known use of the word thank you occurred in the 12th century, about 1,000 years ago. But it didn't exactly translate as gratitude. It translated as the word think. It comes from, get this again, from Latin, from tongere, which means basically to think. And loosely translated, as I said before, it means I will remember what you have done for me. And it's not the only language that has that. You know, for example, as I said, in Spanish, in Italian, we have grazie, we have gratias, and it comes from the word for grace. And there are similarities in English and Spanish, French, and many languages about that. You know, in French, merci comes from the old French for merci, which means a reward, a gift, kindness, grace, and pity. So that's where it comes from. And in Japanese, I was looking for this because someone once told me, oh, the Japanese got it from the Portuguese, and arigato is connected to obrigado. But I was kind of skeptical about that, so I looked into it, and it derives from the word arigatashi. And if you break the word down, it means to exist. Aru means to exist, and katai means difficult, which would mean it's extremely uncommon, rare, and precious. So in that language of Japanese, they consider the word to show some kind of deep appreciation. So even though the language of thank you goes back hundreds, maybe thousands of years, the fact is that every language has this idea of thanking the other. And regardless of the culture, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Asia, whether in Europe, South America, North America, wherever, people have an understanding of actually considering the other. Okay? So, this past Friday, we honored Eve Reeves. In the midst of many restrictions, very few people could gather. There were social distance rules and more. And also, as you know, Eve's family, they haven't been participating for quite some time. But the children and Sylvia wanted to have a ceremony, a sangwa, which is a Korean term for the words ascension and harmony. And we tried our best to accommodate and collaborate with the family and to do a simple ceremony, which was restricted also by time. We had 45 minutes. And Sylvia thanks everyone, and she wrote last night, thank you so much to all brothers and sisters for their prayers and support for Eve's Sangwa ceremony, from Sylvia, David, and Demelia. When we hold a Sangwa ceremony, there's a good reason to reflect about our lives and to consider the essential matters of life. Why, what is important in life, and who are we connected to? With whom do we have a relationship with, and who loves us? In that situation, you start thinking, okay, if this would happen to me tomorrow, who would consider me? Who would remember me? And more importantly, how would I be remembered? Would I be remembered as a schmuck, as a difficult person, as a person that maybe people are happy to see that they died, that he or she died? Sometimes I think about that. Will some of you think, oh, finally, he's gone, right? Or will anyone have any sense of gratitude for the fact that I lived my life as I did, and so forth? Of course, we're talking about gratitude this morning. And I think each one of us has to think about that point. And it led me to reflect more about grace and gracias and merci and thank you. As far back as I can remember, I always felt loved by God. And I've been blessed with God's love and God's grace. And this gives me strength and courage and the sense of optimism and a sense of gratitude and a positive view on life. And I'd like to share my screen again, if I may. Let's see here how I do that. I attribute a lot of the sense of gratitude that I have to my ancestry, to my grandmothers, to my family, because they lived a life of gratitude. How do I know this? Well, because when I met my two grandmothers way back in 1975, let me get this right. Sometimes it gets screwy here. Hold on. No. When I met my grandmothers in 1975, I learned from them that they actually lived a life of prayer. They lived a life of constantly praying for their children and their grandchildren. And I asked myself, well, where did they learn to develop that kind of gratitude? They must have learned it from their ancestors and from their grandparents and from their ancestors before that. These are my two grandmothers, my maternal and paternal grandmother. They prayed for each one of us every day, right? As good Catholics, they had the rosary, and they told me, I prayed for all my children and my grandchildren. And because they had lived such a difficult life, imagine, my grandmother was born in 1895 and 1907. They saw war, 2 wars. They saw suffering. They saw every kind of tragedy, and they had no education. They both could write because they did the first grade and nothing else. Okay? So I'll stop sharing for a second. And these two people actually had a tremendous impact on my life, because I learned at that young age, I was 17, and I spent a couple of months living with my grandmother as I got up to all kinds of stuff. And this was just a few weeks before I met the church. And, I correspond with my cousin who lives in Australia. And, regularly we share through WhatsApp. And, she wrote a few days ago and she said, well, I heard you had a lot of snow. And I said, yeah, what else is new? So then I said, well, okay, I'll send her a picture of our backyard to give her an idea of how much snow we actually had. So I sent her a picture from this past summer where we had the garden. And, we got into gardening this year because of COVID more than ever. And then I sent her another picture of what it looked like now. And basically the whole garden is covered with snow, maybe about 1.5 meters or so of snow. And she says, wow, I said to her, this winter hasn't been that bad. It's been somewhat mild, but to give you an idea of how much snow we got, look at the pictures, I said to her. And she wrote back, oh, this is very pretty, but it's very cold. Brrr. And I said, well, it's not that cold. It's just below freezing today. And I said to her, spring's around the corner. And I made a comment. I said, optimism reigns. We're all optimistic here because spring will be on its way soon. And then she writes back and she says, obviously our definition of not that cold differs greatly. And then she said to me something that made me think about, what we were taught by our ancestors. Her father was my father's eldest brother, first of the family. I guess if my father had migrated to Canada instead of Australia, I would understand your reasoning. Yes, she probably would have been as positive and optimistic about the snow as I am. So, like I said, I attribute God's guidance of my ancestry and very much, God's guidance to be grateful and to be filled with grace to my heritage and the ancestry who prayed and paid indemnity and were constantly expressing their gratitude to God for everything. They prayed when they ate, they prayed when they went to bed, they prayed in gratitude for the harvest, they prayed in gratitude when their children came back from war. They prayed that they were alive. They prayed in gratitude that they were alive and that they weren't sick. And they learned that from their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents. So my conclusion is that to live a life of gratitude, we need to live a life of, to be filled with grace, I should say. To be filled with grace, we need to live a life of gratitude. You know, this morning, Dr. Young read from Corinthians 13. He said, "Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth." This is from St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians that Dr. Young quoted. It always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, and it always perseveres. This is the life that we've been asked to live a life that is not a life of complaint. It's not a life of being bitter. It's not a life of being negative. It's not a life of being pessimistic. It's not a life which rejoices when someone else suffers. It's not a life which basically looks to the negative side, but looks to the positive, looks to the optimist view of life. So again, when you think about it, our life is one of faith. It's one where we actually want to see that our glass is really half full and not half empty. It's really a life where we consider that everything we do, that's what I want to show you, not your own faces, but it's a life where we change our perspective and look at life in a way that actually is positive and joyful. So you look at true parents. This is a picture from the latter part of their life. Even though father has endured prison 6 times, even though he has been persecuted severely and still could not be at ease in this world because of the constant challenges, the challenges in their family, the challenges in their community, the challenges with their own children. Father kept a positive, grateful, optimistic mind. And even in his later years, had big ideas. He wasn't just talking about creating one family under God, but he was talking about building tunnels and building bridges across the Bering Strait to create a highway around the world that unites us all. And mother, who lost her husband, I would say prematurely. He was only 92, and everyone expected him to live a much longer life. Some predicted he would live till he was 120. You know, mother, I remember when father was sick in August of 1992, of 2012, she said, I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't prepared for this. I wanted to see father live longer. And she could have been despondent. She could have been pessimistic. She could have been hurt because, as you know, in 2012, many, many challenges faced her. Yet she continued gratefully. She's optimistic. And you can maybe not find too many women in the world, or men for that matter, who have a vision to save 1/3 of the world's population within the next 7 years. or at least to touch them in such a way. This is the visionary. And this, I believe, comes from the life of gratitude, from the life that is filled with grace, filled with God's grace, that we should emulate, that we should copy. So, what's the message today? The message is simple. The message is, let's be grateful. Let's be positive. Let's see our glass as half full. With that, God's grace will be with us. God's grace will constantly surround us. What is God's grace really? God's grace is God's energy, God's power, and God's love. God's grace is what provides us with the energy to continue to work for our own spiritual growth. God's grace is what actually assists us in our quest to become one in mind and body. God's grace is what makes it possible for us to be in loving relationships with each other. We think that we can do it by ourselves. You think that by going to a course, you will improve your life with your spouse? It will help. Yes, it will help. But you need God. People think they can bring about peace. People think that they can solve the problems that exist in South Asia or in the Middle East or between black and white or between East and West. We can't do it without God. That's the message that our true parents bring. We cannot solve the issues that we're facing without God. So, if you want to solve whatever challenges you have in your family, with your spouse, with your friends, with me, with anybody else, we need God. We need to be empowered by the grace of God. This is what Martin Luther realized. He said, I can't solve these issues by myself. Sola gratia. Sola gratia. That's the basis of salvation. Sola gratia means by faith only. Well, he got it partially right. We need to put that into practice. Sola gratia from God needs to translate into gratitude and assistance for each other. So these two together brings us to the healing that's required in our marriage, in our family, in our community, and beyond. Therefore, whatever we do, whether it's the Family Federation or UPF, whether it's Universal Peace Federation or Women's Federation or Youth Federation for Peace, any of these areas, what we teach essentially is that without God, we cannot achieve that goal. Without God's intervention, without God's love, without the grace of God, we cannot fulfill our goal. So it's a simple message. It's a simple message that I was reminded of when I was 20 by the Messiah himself when he gave us that talk on making sure that our lunch, that we were grateful for the lunch that we were carrying in our pocket, and that we should be grateful for whatever smell or odor comes our way. And we should train our nose to be grateful under all circumstances. Can we do that? Maybe we can try within our isolated state these days. You know, in the last few months, I believe, I don't know if my wife agrees with me, but we've come closer as a couple. We've had more time with each other than I have ever had in the last 40 years. And in some cases, I know it can be challenging because finally you have to confront that person that you may have wanted to avoid But no, here we are in a situation where we have to be with each other each and every day. So please bring God into your life. Bring the grace of God into every situation. And we will then actually be closer to God, closer to each other, and closer to the goal. Let us pray. Heavenly Parent, thank you so much for your love and your grace and for providing us with so many blessings throughout our life, that we could be born in this country, or we can live in this country, which is the fruit of many, many centuries of struggle and suffering by those people that sought for goodness and peace and freedom. That we have a country that has as its motto peace, order, and good governance. A country that respects your vision for peace and strives to, has striven throughout its history to establish a good society where all people can live in harmony and prosper. I pray that we can see this spread throughout this world, the ideal that you have, and that centering on our true parents, we can transform the world around us and bring it into the peace that you so much desire. Thank you so much for every brother and sister, for every person that loves, for every person that helps, for every person that serves one another. May you guide each and every one, and may you bless each one this week. This I pray and report with all my brothers and sisters, and in our name, Franco and Chizuru Famularo, a blessed central family, adieu.
Thank you, Franco, for your message today. And merci, muchas gracias. And actually, we're grateful that we could hear this message today in the comfort of our homes. We didn't have to put our boots on, we didn't have to put our coats and drive for 10 minutes or 20 minutes to go to church and to then take off our coats and everything. So we could do it in the comfort of our homes. And we're grateful for that. And we pray for each and everyone's protection and safety in this time of pandemic. So on this, let's hear our third song, our final song today, "Oh My Little Lambs." Let's hear that. Wonderful. So